Hi, I'm Pastor Taylor Sandlin with Sugar Land Baptist Church, and this is the latest on our church's response to the COVID-19 crisis. I want to begin by saying a word of thanksgiving for your continued participation in the life of our church. Our live stream attendance and the attendance in our ABF Zoom meetings are actually up as we continue to meet with one another virtually each week. In fact, we've added people to our ABF classes during the season of this crisis, meaning God is doing remarkable work at reaching new people even when we can't be here in the building. I also want to thank you for your continued participation through giving. Because of your generosity, our church is in a strong financial position today, and we're using that position to continue to serve the least of these by fully funding all of our missions partners both here and abroad. In fact, not only have we been able to meet our commitments to those organizations, in many cases we've been able to exceed those commitments, giving additional funds to East Fort Bend Human Needs Ministry and Second Mile as they feed hungry people here in our own community, and additional gifts to what used to be called Texas Baptist Men. It is the Texas Baptist Disaster Relief Organization. They now simply go by TBM. We've been able to make an additional gift to them as they address the most vulnerable communities throughout our state. We now find ourselves at a time where Texas is beginning to reopen. You likely saw Governor Abbott's press conference in which he talked about businesses beginning to reopen, and you may be wondering what that means for our church family. I want you to hear me up front. There's nothing I long for more than to be back together in worship. I do not like preaching to an empty sanctuary. But there are two questions we have to be able to answer before we are ready to come back. And one of those is, can we do this in a manner that's safe? And while their churches are together working on some best practices for gathering back together, really as of last week in meetings with pastors all across the greater Houston area, and especially with the Union Baptist Association, the Baptist Association that we are a part of, we have not yet found ourselves at a place where we think it is safe to bring large congregations back together. In fact, in the federal guidelines, it really waits until phase 3 before it allows for groups of more than 250 to gather back together again. And while we have permission currently to come back together, that doesn't necessarily mean we're ready to do that. We are, though, working right now diligently with our COVID-19 task force, which is made up of staff members, it's made up of our key lay leaders, our deacon officers and others, and representatives from the medical field. We are working on a plan that will get us safely back to church. That includes the purchase of additional supplies that right now are in high demand. And so it's going to take us a few weeks to get all of those things ready before we'll be ready to come back to church. The second question, though, is not just is it safe, but does coming back to church help us to bear witness to Christ? That should always be a great concern for us, is do our activities reflect well on who Christ is and what He longs for in this world? Jesus put it this way when someone asked Him what were the greatest commandments. He said the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. He said the second is like it. We are to love our neighbor as ourselves. I, for one, am thrilled that Texas is beginning to open. I know that for many of our neighbors, getting their businesses open is essential to their livelihood. I also know that from the governor's statements and our president's statements and the statements of medical personnel, both locally and nationally, that the only way those businesses get to stay open is if the curve continues to decline. And so one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, does coming back together as a church family help us to continue that decline, or does it put that decline in jeopardy? The truth is, we've shown we can actually do virtual church pretty well, even if we prefer to be here in person. Again, I prefer to be here in person, but we've shown that our church can actually thrive and serve Christ and one another doing virtual church. And so I really think that it will help us bear witness to our community of Christ's love and compassion for us to take a few weeks to formulate our plan for coming back and actually to wait before we come back to help assure that we continue to flatten the curve so that your businesses and our neighbors' businesses can continue to operate and move back to a life where they are economically viable. And so if you have folks ask, why isn't your church meeting yet? just know one of the ways we can answer is we think by waiting to get back together, even though we want to, that by waiting we can better serve our community in Christ's name and with Christ's love. Over the next week, we're going to be getting more information to you about our plan for reentry, including possible dates, including different opportunities for you to be here for different small groups. But I wanted you to hear from me today. It's not going to be this week. It's not even going to be in the next few weeks. We are going to make sure that we have our plan fully in place and have really the blessing of our civic leaders and our medical leaders to do so. And then at that point, friends, I promise, I will be absolutely thrilled to see your face. Until then, if you have any questions or needs, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email is on the website. I check it almost all day long, and I'm glad to get back to you if you have any questions or prayer needs. Friends, I love you. I'm praying for you. I hope you pray for me. God bless.